So yeah, excited to be here. My name is Michael Venturiello. I'm the founder and owner of Christopher Street Tours, which is a New York City-based LGBTQ walking tour company. I grew up in a small town in upstate New York. I was learning traditions of being Italian while also learning traditions of Catholicism. And I was confused. Is this part of Italian culture or is this part of religion? Part of Italian culture also has this like machismo, like being, masculine and, there's certain roles, like the woman cooks and the men just sit at the table. I was the kind of kid who was very flamboyant. I would walk around in my mom's heels, play around in her makeup bag. I think the first time I remember being gay for what gay actually means was in first grade, and I had a crush on the boy who sat next to me. Although I didn't really know what gay meant at the time, I knew that it was wrong. I've kind of kept that secret to myself all throughout school, and it wasn't until much later when I was in college that I finally came out. When I was in seventh grade, I moved to a different state. Everything was brand new for me. Internally, I was struggling a lot with who I was and my sexuality, and I knew that I was different. I knew that I was gay, but I also knew that that was wrong. I thought maybe if I changed something about myself, I would be liked more. I think in my head, I thought maybe they wouldn't like me for being gay, but they would like me if I was skinnier or if I looked better or I fit kind of the standard mold. So I would skip meals and I would do everything I could to avoid eating in general. And my parents ultimately put me in therapy and I was diagnosed with anorexia. And that persisted through middle school and even into early high school. And the thing that's interesting about an eating disorder is it never fully goes away. Like you're always recovering, like you're always a recovering anorexic, even if I'm not actively engaged in that. And even through that time in my life, the teenage years, not being able to fully embrace who I was, and that was how I coped. That was my coping mechanism. Growing up Catholic, I felt a lot of shame about who I was because I was told that that was unacceptable or that was wrong. Eventually, I learned that was just what someone's idea of God said. And I didn't have to believe that. I didn't have to believe what was told to me just because my parents took me to this particular institution of faith that said these things and these are the rules to live your life. Some people really find comfort in that. Some people really experience trauma from that. And luckily enough, I was able to step away from the church eventually and was able to come to terms with a God that I believed in, a God that is love and light, and one that I might call the universe. And that's what I believe in now, and coming to terms with my faith growing up, really just having a core set of values that I live by every day. So I was outed in college. This was like my first like real crush. He was tall and handsome and smart, and he asked me out on a date. I felt awkward and shy, and the hottest guy in school was asking me out on a date. I shared this with a really close friend. What do I do? I was kind of freaking out and a little anxious about it. What do I do? What do I say? What does this mean about me if I want to say yes? And she coached me through and was like, go for it. And I did. And we went out on a date and it was wonderful. We went to a lot of small college towns. They have like the college diner. And we just went to the diner and he treated me. And I thought that was like the biggest thing ever, even though it was probably like, $5 for some eggs and some toast. I came back from that date and I found out that she had told everybody on our floor in our college dorm room, and everyone was coming up to me and asking me about it and how it went. And that was kind of how everybody found out that I was gay, even though I had not even put a label on myself yet at that time, and kind of just accepted that to be true for the rest of my college career and really stepped into that identity. There's something about being a gay person and a queer person and having the ability to share who you are stripped away from you. It's an incredible violation of who you are. Luckily, I was able to reclaim that in my adulthood. It came out to my family. I finally feel now as a 33-year-old that I'm able to kind of reclaim that power and step into that identity as someone who is openly proud, very free and liberated from that kind of societal expectation, and just be me. So after college, I went to graduate school. I was really excited to be finally like a proud, openly gay person exploring a new city. And I started dating and meeting all these guys, and it was a fun time. But I didn't find a person that I wanted to imagine spending my life with. And I kind of gave up on love, which sounds silly. I mean, I was only 25, which seems so young now, but I had really given up on finding someone. And it wasn't until I moved to New York after graduate school and was working at NYU that I met my now husband, Rolly. We've been together ever since, and that was 7 years ago. After graduate school, I could either move to Paris, and I was offered a job in Paris as an au pair for a gay family, or right around the same time, I got offered a job to work at NYU. So I followed my gut and I moved to New York City. I was just a recent graduate, 25, 26 from grad school, and I was living and working in a building with 600 18-year-olds, 600 first-year students. Any hour before my job started or after, you could find me in a cafe in the underground of New York, fervently writing a book about LGBTQ history, specifically about the Stonewall riots and the Stonewall uprising of 1969. And I was like, this is what's going to do it for me. I'm going to write this book. I'm going to share the history with the world, and it's going to be incredible. One day, I was giving an LGBTQ history tour, and I met a Google recruiter who came on my tour, and we were chatting a little bit, and I was like, kind of at that point where I was looking for something different. And he was like, oh, if you ever want to chat, let me know. He was a great recruiter. He did a great job at this. And I immediately jumped on the opportunity and was like, let's get coffee. I'm so excited about this. And literally less than 2 weeks after that, I had a job offer handed to me to work at Google. And while I was doing that, I was looking for my own personal community, and I joined ACT UP. It was an AIDS activist organization that was actually started in 1987 by Larry Kramer, who is just an incredible author, activist, and one of my life's heroes. It was so incredible. I had never seen this before. It was so eye-opening to me that a group of queer people could come together amidst something so terrible, the AIDS epidemic, and continue to fight, even though they knew that they might not be there for the next generation. They might not be there to see the impact of their work, but they still did it anyway. And that, to me, was so inspiring that I said, okay, what's an easier, quicker way to share the history of these people, of my community, with the world? Maybe it's not writing a book. The short story of it is I was working at Google during the pandemic and got laid off this past August because of the tech layoffs and everything that's happening. A lot of people would hear that and think, that's really awful. You're working at one of the best, biggest tech companies in the world, and you got laid off. And there are some really tragic stories that accompany that. But after getting laid off from Google, deciding to pursue Christopher Street Tours full time. So what I did was I took all of the history that I was learning from Stonewall about writing this book, and all the oral history that I was learning from ACT UP and the 1980s and 1990s, and kind of pieced that together, filled in a couple of the blanks, ended with where are we now in LGBTQ activism and the community at large. And that was really the birth of Christopher Street Tours. We give LGBTQ walking tours of New York City. And I get a chill saying that now because I know that, yes, I am giving the tour and people see me and they learn from me, but it's so much bigger than me. It's the history, it's the community, it's the resilience and activism of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people that I will never know. But I feel like every single tour I give, I feel their spirit. I'm honoring them and the work that they did to get us to this point. On our tours, we talk a lot about activism. And I think people are a little scared of that word activism. They think it's, thousands of people marching in the streets and rioting and getting arrested. And that is true. That is activism. But that's not the only kind of activism. Going back to my tour, the hope is that people feel that call to action, not to necessarily get in activism in the way that you might think, but to feel it in a way that feels right for you, where you feel like you can contribute with your own gifts that you have and continue to uplift these incredible stories of the people that have paved the way before us. Giving LGBTQ history tours has taught me about activism. It's taught me a lot about reclaiming our power, who we are, that we are incredible humans, not despite of being gay, but because of it. It's so inspiring to learn about those who came before us and how they lived their life in spite of everything that they had to endure. It gives me purpose and passion. Life is so short. I wish that I could have lived a more liberated life. I feel like so much of my life was being afraid of what people would think, what they would say, how they would treat me because of who I was. I think representation is really life-saving in a way. And to see ourselves not just represented in media, TV, all of that, but to see ourselves represented in history tells us that we have been here before. We are here now. And we will continue to work through whatever comes our way because we are an incredible, resilient group of people. And I'm honored to be a part of that legacy. I've met thousands of people from all over the world that want to come on these tours and learn about this really incredible history. So it's wild to think of where I first started, of holding that kind of deep, dark secret. And now I think of myself as a professional gay. People pay me to give them the gay history of New York City, and it's really my life's honor and my life's work. So if you're ever in New York City and you want to learn more about the LGBTQ history of the neighborhood and you want to meet me, you could join us at Christopher Street Tours.